what happened is I went off work for Disney for 3 years. Had a fantastic time working within the Disney Character Voices International department. So that's the first time I really encountered dubbing. So in games it's just known as localization or loc, but it was introduced me to this idea that everything, all the content is dubbed into up to 45 languages, and I was working in this sort of TV dubbing department there at Disney in Hammersmith. And then moved to Pinewood Studios and in 2005, and as a sort of junior re-recording mixer for features, and that was working on the Disney account. So Shepperton particularly, which is part of the Pinewood group, had a division there which made all of the dubs for Disney feature animation. And so when I got there, we were doing a lot of sequels and things like this, but also there were the big tentpole movies, like at the time, I think it was Treasure Planet was Disney's one, which came out at the same time as Harry Potter and bombed, unfortunately. But then we were also doing all of the Pixar stuff as well. So I think the first one I really got involved in from a mix point of view was The Incredibles. And then all of the
cool film.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's still one of my favorites, even now. That and Cars and some of those real Pixar at their peak. Up, Wall-E, and so that was dubbing everything into. I think the reach for languages on those movies was about 44. And so there was 4 or 5 of us mixing. So you'd take 5 or 6 of the languages, and as I kind of rose up the ranks, I would get to do the bigger languages, which was the European ones and the Japanese. And I had a lot of fun doing that for 15 years, I think, pretty much. I was there, and then I was kind of, there are various points in your career where there's a window of opportunity opens, and you think, am I going to go for this, or am I just going to stay doing what I'm doing? And Pinewood Shepperton is a pretty prestigious place to work in the film industry, but the hours were very long. I'd missed quite a few kids' birthdays in my in the years I was working there. We were always pretty busy over Easter, which is where my kids' birthdays are. We had big Christmas movies. There was always the big Marvel movies and so. And then the Lucasfilm movies in the later years there. So it was a lot to, I got to my mid-40s by that point and was just trying to work out whether that's something I wanted to carry on doing. And those sort of phenomenal, great movies, but a lot of commitment to being there, in the dark in these enormous mix rooms, which were great fun. But anyway, so I had this opportunity to go back into games, kind of like almost 30 years later in Brighton as well. So Jay Green, who's the art director at Electric Square, I knew him. I'd seen him in a pub about 10 years ago from now, actually, and we sort of talked about what he was doing in games. And I'd been out of the loop for 20 years on that stuff. And he was asking how I was doing, working on the sort of movies I was in localization. And he said, well, if there's ever any point to get you come work back in games, I'll give you a shout. And he did. So anyway, what happened was I interviewed for Electric Square. I didn't know anything about games in terms of the current tech. And I went off and did an Fmod in a weekend. So Fmod is one of the audio middleware packages which the audio designers use in games, and that along with Wise. Anyway, there was an Fmod in a weekend course. So I did that and passed it, or I think that did the exam on this, and so took that to Electric Square to the interview and said, look, okay, I've done some training, here we go, and they hired me. I had no idea what I was doing, other than I knew how to deliver things, I knew how to get things done with sound, how to make things sound good. And it turned out on my first day, and Andy Gibson was there, and who's the co-founder of Reverence with me, and he was the guy that had done he designed the Fmod in a weekend course. So I was like, oh, you're the guy that I did the course with. And so, he was pretty, he had to say that, well, this guy must be good if he's done my course, right? So, so I had a good laugh about that. And then we got to meet Gwen. So Gwen was working in code, not audio code at the time, but on a particular game that was going on at Electric Square. And what really amazed me about the studio there was that I'd come from quite a, the culture in movies where I was very different from games. The game seemed to be really collaborative, very relaxed. People were much younger. I was definitely the oldest guy at the Electric Square by that point. And also people weren't really trading on past reputations at all. I mean, I think that I remember getting there and people would say, oh, well, what job have you come from before? And they're quite interested, and they go, oh, wow, you just worked on Black Panther or whatever it was. That's cool. But then that reputation lasts like seconds, and then it's really like, well, what do you do now? What can you offer this game? And that was pretty humbling and exactly what I needed.